Hello and welcome to this session on overcoming overwhelm. Before we get into the session, I want to define my terms really quickly because there's a big difference between being overloaded with work and being overwhelmed with work. Overload is essentially having too much going on. You've got a lot of workload, you've got a lot on your plate. But overwhelm is the feeling that comes with that sometimes. It's that feeling of not being able to manage, not being able to cope. And those are two very different things. Overcoming overwhelm is not just about time management and organization, it's about managing how you're feeling as well. And it's really important we make that distinction between overload and overwhelm. Let's, as always, begin by defining why we are here, what the point is, why are you watching this session? So, if you're experiencing overwhelm at the moment, you are likely feeling confused, a little bit discombobulated. I love that word. You're feeling a little bit out of sorts because there's just so much going on. It feels like there's a bit of a cloud over your head and you can't quite make sense of everything that's happening. You're feeling confused. And this leads to paralysis by analysis. We overthink, we then try to analyze all of the information and we feel paralyzed. We feel like we can't make head nor tail of things and we just feel stuck. That is that overwhelmed feeling. And then that leads us on to procrastinating. And essentially, the pile of tasks gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we get further and further behind, and we feel more and more overwhelmed. So, let's talk about a really simple 4-step system that's going to help you to overcome your overwhelm and manage this a little bit more easily. So, first and foremost, we are going to go through the cycle and then we're going to add a bit more detail to it. So, first stage is going to be acknowledge. Acknowledge and accept things as they are right now and what is within your circle of control. I'm going to tell you exactly, practically, how to do that in a second. Then we are going to make sense of all that information. Once we've acknowledged how things are, we're going to make sense of it. We're going to create some kind of structure to help you with that. Thirdly, we are going to start small. We're going to choose some tasks and we're going to get going with them, basically. And then finally, we are going to tackle the one biggest task. So that is the 4-part cycle. I want to talk you through it and give you some more thoughts. So first and foremost, acknowledge and accept how things are. This means clearing your mind, emptying your thoughts. And there's a few different ways that we can do this. We could talk to a loved one. We could voice memo ourselves in the car on the way home so our thoughts are out of your head and into a safe space. We might journal. We might practice mindful breathing and just try to process our thoughts. We might go for a walk. This is all about helping you to accept how things are right now. Because if we just try to bury our heads as we normally do and try and crack on with the tasks, quite often they keep piling up and we don't actually get anything done. We're not being productive. We are simply being busy. So we need to stop, deal with this feeling of overwhelm first and foremost before we can then move forward. So we're going to accept how we're feeling. We don't have to be happy about it, but we just need to be okay that it is happening. We don't need to be joyful about the fact that we've got so much to do, but we just need to say, okay, this is how things are. There is a lot going on. But the primary activity that I recommend for this is to mind dump. So this is clearing your mind. Big piece of paper, write and write and write until no new thoughts come to the front of your mind. And that's when you know you're kind of finished, you're kind of done. So you're clearing your mind from all those thoughts. Secondly, then what we can do is we can maybe get some highlighters or some color pens, and we can highlight things by either priority or maybe we could highlight them by category. Is this a home job? Is this a work job? Is this a health job? Is this a life job? So just doing that can really, really help. This is all about seeing things more clearly and clearing that fog of overwhelm. Then, once we kind of know roughly where the ground lies, we can move on to make sense a little bit more of all of that. And this is about creating a structure and first and foremost, finding out what your priorities are and getting comfortable with accepting that not all of it's going to be done. And that's going to be a big part of what we're going to talk about today. Not everything can be done in the time that you have. We need to get comfortable with that uncomfortable fact. When you are making sense, which we're going to talk through in a second, we need to be really conscious of the tiny tasks. Now, these tiny tasks are things that will probably take us like 1 to 5 minutes. They're really short tasks, but when they pile up, they become a huge compound blocker for our brain, and it feels like a huge barrier to our progress. So we need to be aware of the tiny tasks. And actually, when we go to start small, that's where we're going to begin. So when we're talking about creating a structure, what we can do, we've now got all of our thoughts on this piece of paper or in a voice memo, or you've spoken it out and you feel more clear. We can now think about organizing that by priority. So grab yourself another piece of paper and draw for me 4 quadrants. We are going to do the Eisenhower matrix, or use the Eisenhower matrix, sorry. So this matrix is really, really simple. Across the top, we are going to have tasks that are urgent and not urgent. And then down the side, we are going to have the titles of important and not important. So if it is urgent and important, we are going to have that as a do now task. Now, as a teacher, everything is going to straight away fill up that do now box, and that's okay. Then to the right of that, the top right quadrant, you then have tasks that are not urgent but are still very important, and these are the tasks that we are going to delay. Then you've got tasks in the bottom left quadrant which are urgent but not important, so you're going to delegate those tasks to someone else. And then finally, bear with me on this one, you've got tasks that are not urgent, not important, and we're going to try to delete those, or if that's too uncomfortable, we're going to delay them very, very far into the future, let's just say. So we've got do now, delay, delegate, delete. Those are the 4 quadrants. So I want you to, all of that information, all of those thoughts from your mind that you dumped earlier, I want you to now put those into the Eisenhower matrix. And now we're just going to focus on the do now tasks. And we are going to get ourselves a third piece of paper, and we're going to create a timeline. And we're going to put days or weeks across the top. It's really important that this isn't a calendar, because a calendar can be quite abstract. Time doesn't really flow in nice little boxes. It's more of a continuum. So this can work really well as a great visual for our minds. So we're going to pop our dates or our weeks across the top, however you choose to do it. And I want you to start plotting some of the really big tasks. So some of the things from that do now box that are absolutely do nows, you can't delegate them, you can't delay them for 1 or more days, and you cannot delete them. Those need to be plotted on the timeline for when they need to be completed. So we've acknowledged and accepted, we've cleared our mind, we have then gone and made sense, we've sorted out what our priorities are, we've now put those big tasks on timeline, those are taken care of, those are sort of safe now. Now let's move on to the third step, and we're going to start with the tiny tasks. We're going to start small. So I want you really, really simply to give yourself a 15 to 30 minute timer. Forget about everything we've already done. We're just focusing on those tiny tasks now, the ones that are really, really small, 1 to 5 minute jobs. And we are going to simply get as many of those tiny tasks done as possible. This is going to help us to get a little hit of dopamine, that reward chemical. It's going to help us to build motivation and momentum. And then ultimately, we are going to go on to tackle a big task. This might be replying to that email, or cancelling that appointment, or responding to that bill that's come through the door. Doesn't matter what it is, but tiny, tiny tasks, get them done. It's going to really build up your sense of moving forward, and you're going to feel like you're making progress. It's important to say as well that these tiny tasks might also be adjacent tasks. So what I mean by that, let me give you an example. When I go to write my reports, what I would do is I would create the folders for the reports to go in, and I would label it, and I would copy and paste my template, and I would name them in the children's names. So that's not actually me doing my reports. That's me completing a tiny adjacent task that a lot of people think is a waste of time, but actually, like I say, it builds up that sense of momentum. So some of your tiny tasks may also be adjacent tasks. Fourthly and finally, then, we are going to tackle the top task, just the one big task, just to get that big ball rolling. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to set ourselves a timer, a Pomodoro timer, for 25 minutes, and we're going to have 25 minutes of concentrated, focused work on that task. And then we're going to take either a 5 or a 15-minute break, depending how much break you feel you need. And we're going to get up, we're going to move, we're going to have a glass of water, and we're going to take a break from screens and from real conscious thought. So in that 25 minutes, I want you to put yourself on airplane mode. I want you to put some relaxing music on, or some concentration beats, or some binaural beats, or something like that. I want you to let everyone know that they are not to contact you. Put a sticky note on your door, put your headphones in so people think you're in a meeting. Do whatever you need to do. Get yourself some real solace. We need to protect your peace during this time, because we need this big task to be done so that cloud of overwhelm feels like it's been lifted. So those are the 4 stages of the overcoming overwhelm cycle. We have accepting and acknowledging things as they are, starting to make sense of that cloud of overwhelm a little bit. Then we're going to move on. We're going to create some structure. We're going to decide what your priorities are. Then we're going to plot those big tasks on a timeline. Then we're going to start small. We're going to tackle the tiny tasks first. Give yourself a 15 to 30 minute timer and just bash out as many of those small jobs as possible. And then finally and fourthly, we are going to tackle the top task. I really hope this helps. I really hope this helps you to overcome that feeling of overwhelm, and I'll see you in the next one.